so reasonable, in your opinion, to cancel an election? Why did the Labour government only when it was forced to, because it realised that it was actually illegal what it was doing?
Because
why did the government
is now using lawfare to take over?
Hold on. You had no statutory right to cancel elections.
That's not disagreement. That's an accusation of illegality. When you are being told, live on air, that what your government attempted didn't even clear the legal bar, the conversation changes completely. This stops being about efficiency. It stops being about restructuring. It becomes about whether power was stretched beyond its limits. And once legality is questioned, public trust collapses fast.
I can't take him seriously after that little scrap that he had with Camilla about how many homes that Labour had built. Reform UK leader Nigel Farage has called on him to step down, and the Conservatives have also demanded that he resigns. Panel, should Steve go? Laila Cunningham.
Yeah, I think so, because, you know, they've pushed the limits of executive power, and I think the most dangerous idea in politics that I've heard is that the voters can be sidelined or can be ignored, or a casual kind of let's just ignore democracy and do it when it's convenient. Institutions and governments, I think Labour has a difficulty in understanding. They're tools of democracy. They're not the masters of it. And when they start ruling the people and saying, you know, elections aren't going to go ahead, we're going to curb your speech, whatever, freedom becomes conditional. And that's when people say absolutely not. And I think that's why reform exists, because I think institutions like Labour or government tend to govern looking down on people, when actually the ultimate boss are the voters, and it should always be the voters. And I don't think that's how Labour views the voters.
That's the core charge. Labour acting as master, not servant. The moment government starts deciding when voters get their say, it flips the democratic order upside down. And once that perception sets in, the damage is political and permanent.
I would fundamentally disagree with that. Having knocked on many doors asking Labour households their opinions and what their issues are, and often when I knock on those doors, I'll say, "Hello, yeah, I'm here for the council election, as you know, I'm your councillor," and they'll say, "Great, yeah, okay. Well, the potholes outside, they need sorting." I say, "Oh, sorry, that's the other council." And that's why Labour said in their manifesto that they wanted a single tier of local government to make it more effective and efficient. So that is a huge change that we're trying to bring through in quite quick order. Don't forget that we've got a lot of demand at the minute to bring change into materiality very quickly.
Yeah, but not authoritarian change.
Well, hold on. But that has been given assent. It was in the manifesto and the King's Speech bringing local government reform.
It wasn't in the manifesto to cancel elections. That was not in the manifesto
ever. In order to do that, there's been a huge onus on councils like mine who have had to do a lot of work alongside all their other services to actually deliver LGR and how this is going to happen. Part of that is going to be current councils to run elections for the new local government, however they may be, the new councils. So the choice was the MHCLG made the decision to consult with councils and say, do you have the capacity to run an election for your council that's going to be defunct in a year or two, as well as run an election for the new council and do all the work that's going to transfer all your responsibilities across? Do you have that? And they said, no.
Notice how democracy quietly becomes administration. The accusation was about power, but the defence turns into local government mechanics. When the answer shifts from principle to paperwork, it usually means the principle is weak.
The problem is that elections aren't optional if you have the capacity or not. It's not. By the way, you know, we're thinking of doing elections next year. Do you think you can do it or not? And it's a belief that democracy can be paused, or, you know, can be not happen if it's not convenient. And this fundamentally is about who has power, right? And Labour believe that they have power.
But no one's going to have any power. Those people aren't going to have power because their whole council is going to be dissolved.
This is about who has power, right? Is it the ministers or the people? And what we're seeing with Labour is that ministers seem to think that they have the power and not people. Power should flow from the people up. And right now what Labour's doing is it's flowing power from the government down to institutions. You do not, never, ever, in a democracy, do you get to extend your term. It's only voters who have that right, and it should only be extended in an election. And you tried to overrule that fundamental principle of democracy. And I'm afraid to say Reform is the only one that are true believers in democracy, because I'll give it to you, Conservatives also wanted to cancel elections in some parts of the country. So both of you, both parties, are guilty.
Capacity is not a constitutional principle. Elections are not optional based on workload. The moment resources becomes the justification, you're no longer defending democracy, you're managing it.
Well, I'd say that democracy always starts within a party, and I'd be interested to know how Reform elects all of its candidates for its elections.
People are worried about national democracy.
You've asked about democracy.
Don't try.
Well,
don't try and deflect, because that's all Labour does is deflect.
Parties do have to set an example on the type of democracy that they're going to enact in Parliament, and that is a legitimate question.
If parties have to set an example, then how come all your ministers are mired in scandal? What kind of example are you setting to the public when you appointed? All of the ministers are mired in scandal. Hang on, Angela Rayner, who's about
but not all of them.
Angela Rayner, who's being mooted for leader, resigned for a scandal. Starmer might resign for a scandal. I mean, your housing minister, your corruption minister. I mean, you name it. Your ambassador was best friends with the most prolific paedophile. What kind of example is the Labour Party setting for the country there?
So I can't speak for all those people who have done wrong and resigned. But what I can speak to give some clarity here is, if the government had approached, if my council was due to elect this year, it's not, it's due to elect next year. But with all the work we've just done, and officers that have said to us, we don't have the resources to run an election as well as doing all this other work, we would have consulted.
Then you don't do the work and you do the election.
We would have said, well, the work has already been mandated. That's part of the King's speech. It was part of the
manifesto
commitment.
Loads of things have been mandated and you haven't put through.
Look, it's totally fine. We're going through a change curve at the minute, and I'm sure if Reform gets into government, you're going to experience all of these things when you want to bring changes in. But we're trying to bring this new layer of local government in, which is pretty much unprecedented. So the decision was to consult with councils and say, can you do it? The answer from many councils, not all different political persuasions.
You basically ask people if they can extend their job.
Your argument here is that we're denying democracy to people. Far from it. We're adding a new layer of democracy, which was going to elect earlier.
Now the pressure spreads. It's no longer just about elections, it's about integrity, scandal, standards. When credibility is already fragile, any move that looks like power extension hits twice as hard.
So we weren't denying them a democracy at all, because
then why did you
let's hear the
because
reason,
those particular institutions that were about to go to election will soon be defunct. So the priority was going to be that the new layer of democracy would elect first.
Why did you U-turn? If it's so reasonable, in your opinion, to cancel an election, why did the Labour government only when it was forced to, because it realised that it was actually illegal what it was doing?
Because
why did the government
is now
U-turn?
using lawfare to take over.
Hold on.
You had no statutory right to cancel elections.
No, you've been proven to be, that's been proven to be illegal. You're not allowed to cancel elections in that way. The bar wasn't high enough, and we all know that. Bob says, resign Reid immediately. Dennis says, why just Steve Reid? They're all complicit in this disaster. Robert says, Steve Reid does not have enough political clout to have made the cancellation of elections on his own. Thus, this was a Starmer decision. Once again, he's hiding behind someone else. Okay, and finally, Malcolm says, closing down our council, were we asked if we wanted that? Will our council tax increase or decrease? Yes, good question. Well, I don't believe you were asked, sadly, but they thought that they'd do something and it wasn't going to fit the time, so they'd extend the time. Well, listen, coming up, a mother from Gaza has successfully used ECHR, to win the right to move to Britain. Could this ruling now open the floodgates for more Palestinian refugees to follow?
This wasn't just an interview, it was a confrontation over who owns democracy. You heard the defence, capacity, restructuring, mandates, efficiency, adding a new layer, all managerial language, all administrative framing. But the accusation never went away. You do not pause elections because it's inconvenient. This is a pattern. When political institutions believe they are acting for the greater good, they start convincing themselves that procedure is flexible, that timing is flexible, that voters can wait, and every time that happens, trust erodes. You saw how quickly the argument shifted, from legality to potholes, to capacity, to scandal, to restructuring. The central question, do ministers get to delay elections, was never comfortably answered. And this is why trust is gone, because democracy is not a resource management exercise. It is not conditional on staffing, it is not subject to convenience. Power flows from the people, or it doesn't. You felt the tension when legality was mentioned. You felt the discomfort when the word extend was used. That's because deep down, everyone understands the line that cannot be crossed. So here's the question. Is postponing elections reform, or is it control? And would you trust politicians who treat democratic timing as negotiable? If you believe voters, not ministers, should always hold the clock, like the video, subscribe, and turn on the bell.